Come, let us fix our eyes on Jesus. This is Unpopular Theology, episode 54. Today, we are going to return to our history of the church as we deal with Pentecost through around 35 AD or so. So before we get started, go ahead and hit the like button. Go ahead and subscribe. Go over to our Facebook page. Like us over there. Post new content there every Thursday and Friday. I'm going to be honest. Wednesdays just aren't working anymore. With that being said, show keeps going on. Not much else to say about that. As for me personally, we're getting close to the end of the semester here. I'm planning out my classes for next semester. Have my list behind my computer here of what I'll be taking. And it's going to get busy though for me, so part of the reason why content will be limited over the next couple of weeks. And with that being said, celebrating church history, this is Unpopular Theology. So before we actually get into the topic, I do have a disclaimer, an apology, and an explanation. So the disclaimer, if you have not already watched part 1 yet, go watch it. Even if you have not watched it, go watch it again. Personally, I had to watch part 1 over again to know what the heck I was talking about today. So, yeah, it's been a while, I realize, since we made it, and that leads into my apology. I'm sorry for not doing this since October. The plan was that we were going to do, so this is the explanation for the apology. Plan was we were going to do episode of church history every month, and then December we were going to skip over that because that was Advent, and then we would skip over it in February and March because that would be Lent. So what happened was November rolled around. Pretty sure I had the episode written out. No, I did not have the episode written out, but November came around, and the week I was supposed to do the episode, I got quarantined. And so that kind of bummed me out, and I have the episode still up of me being quarantined. Then January rolled around. We were supposed to have the episode then. Well, then the Capitol riot happened, and that just threw my entire schedule off. So after, good grief, almost, let's see, November, December, January, February, March. Yeah, after nearly a 6-month hiatus, here we are with church history. So, the plan is to do this once a month from now on. I've already got May's episode scheduled, and I think I already got June's episode scheduled. I might need to double check that. The other thing is that we are going through the book of Acts for this, so if you want to follow along in your Bible, go right ahead. So we left off last month with verse 41, end of Pentecost Day. So church goes from about 120 to 3,000 in one day. It's a pretty big number, pretty big jump. So then we go to what happens kind of right after that. How do the people who convert at Pentecost respond? And verse 42, it tells us that they devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and the fellowship, to the breaking of the bread and the prayers. So right away, the new converts devote themselves to the divine service. This is really one of the first mentions we have of the divine service in history, is that the divine service is happening here, and the people are devoting themselves to this. Verse 43, and awe came upon every soul, and many wonders and signs were being done through the apostles. Now, here's where I'd like to make a huge point that our charismatic friends will completely disagree with me on. I realize that, but here's the thing. It's the apostles who are doing this. It's not the other believers. It's strictly the apostles. So when they sit there and say that, every Christian can do this, no, it's only the apostles. That was a specific office created by Christ for the 12. Their so-called vision casting leader or apostle, in some cases, is not truly an apostle. That title belongs to a select group of men. Now, granted, they create the model for the pastoral ministry, but the office of the apostle is gone once St. John dies, John being the last apostle to die. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. So they really show love to each other, and this is voluntary. Yeah, so like when it talks about them holding all things in common, uh, they're doing this of their own free will. The church isn't telling them to do this. They do this because they want to. So then we go to Acts 3 through 4:31, and this is Peter and John heal a lame beggar on their way to the temple. So Peter, immediately after healing this man, preaches a sermon. And it's very similar to the sermon we see in Acts chapter 2 on Pentecost. It's very similar content. The difference is that this one's a little shorter. And there's a very powerful illustrate word that Peter uses in 3:14 through 15. He sits there and says, let me find 14. But you denied the holy and righteous one and asked for a murderer to be granted to you, and you killed the author of life, whom God raised from the dead, to whom we are witnesses. To this we are witnesses, excuse me. So Peter makes it clear that, that is a preacher of the law right there. Peter tells them how it is, that they killed the author of life, being Christ himself. It seems a little strange, but yeah, we kill the author of life with Christ. I don't know. I just thought that was a very great way of putting it. So this adds yet another 2,000 people to the faith. So this brings it to about 5,000. And this leads to the first arrest of a Christian in history for his faith. And Acts 4:12, we get the great confession of faith before the Sanhedrin. There is salvation in no one else, for there is no other name under heaven given among men by which we must be saved. This is Peter speaking. So that is basically the Sanhedrin doesn't know what to do after this. They basically let him off with a warning. And after that, they pray for boldness from God. Now, it's another thing to note here that is going to come up here. Christianity at this point really isn't its own religion. It is, but at the same time, it's more or less seen as a sect of Judaism. A very heretical sect, but a sect. They still go to the temple. They're still very Jewish in what they do. It's just that they acknowledge that Christ has been risen from the dead. So then we move to 4:32 through 37. And again, it talks about how they held everything in common. So again, this is not an advertisement for socialism. You can see, I think it was episode 38, where I talked about socialism and why it's bad, and why Christians cannot hold it. This is them doing it of their own free will. They're not being forced to by the church or the government. They're doing this of their own free will because of love for their neighbor. And this is also where we see one of the key characters of the book of Acts coming forward, and that is the character of Barnabas. His real name is Joseph, but the apostles call him Barnabas. It's Aramaic for son of encouragement. And so he will, of course, be a very important figure in the early church. And with that being said, Yeah, this pretty much wraps it up for this week. Next week, we're going to have a real fun time, to be quite honest. I'm going to be responding to a woke pastor's claims that Jesus repented of his racism. You can't make this stuff up. Somebody said that over Lent, and so I will be responding to that. And then next month, we're going to be talking on church history. We're going to be starting off with Ananias and Sapphira. So, until next week, keep your eyes fixed on Jesus.